Boom. What's up, freaks, friends, humans, lunatics, upright bipedal Homo sapiens? How are you? Again, as I start every podcast, I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you've made today the best day that you could have made it, and that you're not allowing the various and sundry difficulties that you face throughout the day that was today to have conquered your day. I hope that makes sense. What's up, Bruce? So listen, what is it with veterans and these altered states of mind? What is it? Why do we see this seeming resurgence, or I guess sort of a reigniting of veterans speaking out or being the loudest voices for things like reform of the way that certain issues are dealt with? So we look at mental issues and we look at the various and sundry different ways that common pharmacology and psychology has chosen to deal with it. We know what's available to us. We know what's out there. We know that if we look hard enough and long enough, we can find the help that we know is out there. I mean, it's common. It's easy. We've got cognitive behavioral therapy. We've got, the list of pharmaceuticals, Zoloft, Ambien, Seroquel, serotonin changers. There's all kinds of different things that they've prescribed, right? And some of them, to some degree or another, have worked for some people. Some people I know who are on Prozac, they like it. Other people hate it. Some people who I know who are on Prozocin or meloxicam or gabapentin, or there's all these different kinds of drugs that people are on, for some for pain, some for this, some for that. I'm not speaking as if I was a pharmacist or a doctor, because I'm not. I'm just trying to pull pharmaceutical names out of my butt that I know about. The point is, they have answers. The people who are in the know have answers. They have the ways that it's normally gone about and finished and done. But then there's this other way that is in the face of the normal way. To the point now, as a veteran, if you go to the VA, you can get Tai Chi. You can go to mindfulness retreats paid for by the VA. You can do this stuff at the VA, through the VA, via the VA. You can do that stuff now. You can go there as a veteran and you can get those things. And that's the result of veterans pushing it. They're forcing it to happen. They're causing it to happen. They're saying, we don't want this anymore. We want that. We don't want that anymore. We want this. We want something different. That's what veterans are saying. And now we have these massive veterans saying things like, I don't want to be on pills anymore. Instead, I want to consider trying this thing that I heard about, where these veterans go to a retreat and they have this experience, and they go to a therapist and they integrate that experience with a therapist into their life, and they are finding that some of these veterans with previously chemically resistant and treatment resistant post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms and depression symptoms, these are disappearing at an unbelievable rate. That they're losing the symptoms that they have identified with maybe sometimes a large portion or subset of their life. They're forgetting things that have previously held them down to the point where they cannot think about anything but that. They're forgetting those things about war, things about trauma, things about life, the various things that have held them and gripped them in their post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever it is. And this is for veterans and non-veterans alike. And so you team this with what they call somatic therapy, which you can Google search Peter Levine, or Levine, however you say his name, and he has a number of books about this subject. But he and his practitioners who follow his ways have sort of unlocked the key to therapy in that way also. They've found a way that they can manage, these somatic therapists, to get someone to that altered state of mind where their body shuts off, or excuse me, their mind shuts off and their body, you could tune into what the body is holding on to. So there's this concept, or there's this idea that trauma is held in the body as well. So the body remembers trauma, but the mind is smart and knows, you can't live in this trauma forever. So it disassociates. So it pauses that trauma for a while, shuts it off. But that doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean that the impact physiologically on your body has not happened. So there's this story in this book that Peter Levine wrote, Levine, whatever, Google it. Something about the tiger within, something taming the tiger, I don't know. Regardless, Peter was talking about a story of a firefighter who had come upon a scene, and he was not working, but it was a car accident that he had watched happen or heard it happen, and just come upon the scene of it just occurring. And he had reached into this vehicle of this person that had this car accident to shut off the car of this vehicle. And in reaching into the car, he discovered two individuals that had already deceased when he had arrived. And one of the individuals was a little girl, and this individual was unfortunately decapitated. And this firefighter was just shocked. And at the moment that he saw this gruesome scene, his arm was just outstretched, reaching for the ignition to shut the key off. And he experienced no clear visible trauma, and to his knowledge he did not have any kind of trauma. But for about a week afterwards, he began to complain to his significant other about a sore shoulder, like it kept not wanting to fully extend. And then he noticed over time that there was this pain, and he hurt his shoulder. It feels like he dislocated or something. So we went to a physical therapist, and this is going on for months now, and months, and he's having these major issues. And he came to the conclusion where he was like, I'm gonna go have surgery. And in the book they detail all the actual what happened, but it came to where basically he had been stuck at the point where he had to choose between leaving it the way it was for the rest of his life, which was with limited mobility, or going and having this incredibly destructive surgery where apparently they just ripped the joint apart and then re-sew it back together. It's horrible, horrific for him. And he was considering doing this, and before he did that, in some capacity or another, he came across Dr. Levine, or one of the individuals that was trained in the same sort of somatic therapy. And in this therapy, again, this individual therapist did not have any capacity to know that that event was causing this firefighter these sort of issues. He didn't know the correlation, the therapist, but just went into the body. And what that means is a lot, and you need to Google it. It's interesting. But basically just allowed the body to move in a way that it wanted to move. It's hard. It's quite difficult to explain, but if you Google or research somatic therapy, it comes up. And he's wearing he's wearing the blinds on his, not blinds, but he's got the things over his eyes, the like sleeping blinds, whatever you call those, sleeping mask. And he's laying in a comfortable bed, and he's listening to soft music. And I don't believe he was under the influence of any kind of mind-altering substance and compounds in any capacity. And he was just laying there. And the whole scene in the book, it's laid out, is so amazing. But it comes to where he's feeling this need to stretch his arm out. And he's starting to get cramps in his arm, so he stretches his arm out. And the doctor's asking, so what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And he's talking and he's communicating, and all of a sudden he began to re-experience the trauma of reaching into this car and seeing this bloody, horrific scene. And realizing that his arm was actually literally frozen. And that's one of the states that this doctor sort of makes a strong case that our mind goes into. This fight or flight, this freeze or or run, and the different cycles that our body gets stuck in. And if our body's not able to finish one of these cycles, sometimes it gets stuck in cold. You know, I know people who have had trauma when they were a child and now they're adults, and I've heard them talk about how they feel like they're just numb. They feel numb. They feel dull. They feel empty. They feel like they're walking in nothingness and gray. And again, the pharmaceutical industry has an answer for that. But I really am not certain if that's the appropriate answer. But regardless of whether it is or isn't, this therapist says it is not. Not that he is anti-drug. I don't know his personal positions. But I do know that he puts a pretty strong efficacy and value on this form of somatic therapy, and I do myself. I've personally experienced it both under the influence of an mind-altering substance in a state that it was legal to consume the substance I was consuming, and I've also done it not on a mind-altering substance, so completely sober. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, there is not a single kind of therapy or therapist or therapeutic event or occurrence that can compare to somatic therapy that I experienced it in a path. And it was in Lakewood, Colorado. And in what capacity they're still offering services that I received there, I do not know. But I understand that they have changed hands a couple times and things are different there. But when I went there, the individual helping me was a very trusted friend and therapist, and it was mind-blowing. It changed my life forever. Now, I say that to say this. I'm telling you all of these stories, first of all, to encourage you personally to consider somatic therapy. I think it's something you should Google. You should research it. You should find out Peter Levine. You should find out what it means. Google these things, research them. They're exceptionally important. And the content and data, whether you find yourself saying, I agree with this or I don't, or I find value in this or I don't, that's okay wherever you're at with that. Like whatever place you find yourself at, that's perfectly fine. I don't expect you to read it and fall in love with it. And neither does, I believe, Dr. Levine. I don't know him personally. I've never met the man, but I can't imagine he puts out a book and says, if everybody doesn't like it, I'm just going to go cross my arms and pout and throw a fit about it. Likewise, if you hear one of my podcasts or hear something I say or see something I write or whatever and you're not changed, it doesn't hurt me. It's not, I don't hang my hat on it. I perhaps maybe in some capacity or another may have in the past. But I can say honestly that I'm doing what I'm doing now because this values me. Saying these things out loud, even hearing myself say them, is actually helpful for me. But I also know the facts. I know that there are a lot of individuals with whom I have relationships with and with whom I care so much, for whom I care so much, that I want them to find some of the value in some of the things that I've found, right? And not because I want them to become more aligned like myself or become more like me, or because there's another thing I think I used to do back in the day, which was like, I think that everything that's perfect for me must be perfect for everybody. I don't believe that anymore. If I did ever wittingly or willingly know that, I don't believe that now. I for sure don't believe that. And I believe it is the peculiar ingredients in life that brings us to the amazing conclusions that we know now to be life. The cars, the phones, these things are developments and advancements that are a result of hardships and difficulty. Hardships and difficulty are not bad; they're actually good. And so, many of you know that I've hurt my toe or foot or whatever the heck you call it, and it's not fantastic. But I'm pleased. I'm pleased that I have this opportunity to learn and to grow, and I look forward to the chance to say that this is something I've tried to work through. I wish that I never wished that I wouldn't have experienced difficulty, because it is actually the difficulty that I find value in. Not that I go pursuing it or looking for it necessarily all the time, but there are definitely times when that occurs. So, how does that relate to the Sonoran desert toad that you're staring at if you're also looking at this screen? How does it relate? Well, the veteran and the altered state of mind. Why does the veteran seek the altered state of mind? There's a variety of reasons that I can pontificate, I'd say. The first, a lot of times, is they want to pursue adjacent thoughts thoughts that are outside of their normal wavelength, because they have found or seen or discovered that their personal normal wavelength is disturbed or disrupted or odd or off or not working right or incorrectly aligned in some capacity or another, and for whatever reason or another they don't like it and they want to pursue an altered state of mind. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean drugs or anything illegal. There are an adequate number of legal substances. In fact, my position on this would be that there are more legal compounds that an individual could consume to alter their mind than there are illegal compounds. If you know where to go and what to do, you can alter your mind quite well and quite efficiently on a giant handful of completely legal compounds that are out there. So the individuals that I know who whine and complain about what is illegal, I understand. I do understand. And it is an interesting juxtaposition that they choose to continue to disallow us to legally obtain and acquire things that they know help us, because evidence has shown it. They know it helps us. But they force us to run through and jump through the hoops, the various and sundry different things that they want us to do in order to prove to them. Oh, are you sure? Did you prove it in every way? I hope you didn't prove it in every way, so now it can't be true at all. That's okay. That's okay. That is all right. It does not have to cause us to be upset, to feel sad or angry. And then there's this other group of people who aren't actually sad about it at all, who are completely and 100% unaware. They have no idea that their supposed rights, according to the libertarians, are being impacted. They have no idea that they can't consume the crumbled up pollen of a plant that grows native in the state of Nebraska. If you grow a special plant in Nebraska, and then you take that plant and you dry it out, and then you take the pollen from that dried out plant and you add a little bit of alcohol, and then you remove the alcohol later and take whatever's left and put that into a capsule and eat that every other day. If you do that, not only are you not allowed and you might get in trouble, it's a felony. And according to the state of Nebraska, it's a couple felonies, meaning you could go to federal penitentiary. You could go to jail. You could go to jail for a foreseeably very long time for doing what I just said you could do. So it's interesting to me that we would get angry or upset. This is what they do. They, being the individuals that want to keep these things illegal, are trying, they say, to keep us safe. And so, I've seen evidence otherwise, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it not because it's not an adversity or a difficulty, but because it is a hurdle, not a wall. It's a mountain, not a roadblock. And even that, I was in the infantry, and roadblocks can be dealt with. Enough explosives or focused fire, you can deal with a roadblock. So how does that relate to the Sonoran desert toad? Well, many of you don't know there's a compound that exists inside of the Sonoran desert toad. If you've ever seen Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, if you've ever read the book by Michael Pollen, if you've ever listened to Joe Rogan, if you've ever heard me talk about it, if you've ever watched Hulu, if you've ever been to the YouTube, if you've ever seen the internet, it's quite likely you might have heard of this. But if you haven't, that's okay. The Sonoran desert toad releases a special, or contains a very special compound in its poisons. I think it's a poison. I'm not sure. I know it's a toxin, but I don't think, I don't really know. But I do know the internet knows. And I have a friend named Raphael who knows quite well. He's one of the ones that's trying to help make legal the synthetic version, which is the exact same chemical compound, but not having had been acquired from a Sonoran desert toad. Now, why is that helpful? Why would someone or anyone be so interested in investing their time and their effort into synthesizing, in essence, making a identical but synthetic version? Why would they be so interested in that? Maybe it has something to do with the nature of this compound. And maybe it has less to do with the fact that veterans are trying to get into an altered state of mind. Maybe it has more to do with the fact that veterans are trying to find healing. And where 1 or 2 or 10 or 5,000 veterans have found healing, other veterans are going to begin to come along. They're going to begin to get interested. Other veterans are going to say, hey, what is this? How does this work? Does this really work? Is this safe? Is this deadly? Is this toxic? Should I tell other people about it? If I do tell other people, how should I tell other people about it? How does it work? Well, these are all fantastic questions that you need to answer, and I would love to answer with the ones that I can. But I'm not a guru. I can't tell you where to find it. But I can tell you this, that the compounds that are found in the poison from the Sonoran desert toad, or toxins, the secretions from the skins, those things contain things. And then also remember this, the state I live in is the Nebraska state, which means there is no legal medicinal cannabis. You can't buy it, you can't own it, but it is decriminalized, which means less than 28 grams you're allowed to have it, in the sense that you will get a civil infraction less than a moving violation. But if you have paraphernalia in your vehicle, that's a crime. If you have concentrate in your vehicle, that's a crime. What's concentrate, Tim? Glad you asked. Listen, right down in Valley, Nebraska, in Springfield and Bellevue, all over Omaha, there's this plant that grows. And now I want you to know that it is a variance of the very same compound that we're talking about being illegal, cannabis. Now, that variant plant has been on this continent for, I don't know, something like a millennia, they say. And what it does here is get treated like a weed most of the time, like a something that gets in the way. Most farmers spray for it, and it has amazing principle, or inside of it has the capacity to do a lot of things. So when you cut it open, it has very strong fibers. It can be used to make jeans. It can be used to print papers to write constitutions on and make clothes. And if you breed it and strain it in a particular way, meaning grow it in a particular way over a long period of time, takes generations, you can identify particular traits, like, for instance, smells or terpene signatures. You can get particular types of tastes. You can get particular types of color. You can get particular types of effects and impacts and compounds. You can get all kinds of things. And so now what's happened is this little plant that grows down in the railroad tracks can also be cultivated to help people in so many different ways that it seems impossible, improbable, and a made-up lie. But that thing grows right down the street from you. If you live in Omaha, that thing grows right down the street, legally. Like, nobody's growing it. It just grows everywhere. Not Sonoran desert toads, but cannabis, hemp, grows everywhere. It's just everywhere. And so we know that, right? But we also know that more than 28 grams is a crime. And we also know that the papers or the glass pipe that you use to consume that flower that is decriminalized is a misdemeanor. And we know that the lighter that goes along with it is illegal. And we know all that. And so we know those two things, and we know that there's a contradiction, and we know that because we're adults and we can put two and two together. We understand that. But what in the world would make so many people advocate for veterans having access to cannabis? Why would that be? Would it be because veterans just want to get high and they just can't stop talking about how great it is to be high, and they just want to be in that altered state of mind and don't want to deal with their problems, and they just want to be messed up? Is that the case? That might be the case if alcohol was not available, and if Prozac was not available, and if Percocets were not available, and if Percodan was not available, and if tobacco was not available. These things make you feel good, folks. I don't know if you know that or not. They make you feel really great, or they have the capacity to, at least. So if somebody's looking to get really, really feeling good, it seems like they know where to go already. Seems like they know what to do, right? If a veteran really wants to get messed up, why waste the time and go break and bend a law? I can just go down to the liquor store and buy as much vodka as my hands can hold and then consume as much as my face can take. Why not do that? Well, I mean, a lot of guys do. But why do they get so vocal about one particular compound over another? Weed, cannabis, 5-MeO-DMT, psilocybin, or psilocin-containing mushrooms. Why are they so interested in these things? Why are they so vocal and verbal about it? Is it because they just want to be high? That would be inconsistent conclusion, in my opinion. Doesn't make sense. When you take rats in a lab, and this is proven again, by the way, you Google this, you can prove it. I didn't come up with this, I didn't make it up, but I definitely know it and have read it and believe it. I haven't done the test myself, but you take these 2 rats and you put them in the cage and you give them cocaine in a little feeder pellet thing. They'll go back to the cocaine until they die. They'll go back to the cocaine and go back to the cocaine and go back to the cocaine and go back to the tobacco and go back to the nicotine and go back to the nicotine over and over and over again. But psychedelics, when you introduce those into the rat's cage, 100% of the rats come back to that psychedelic 100% of the time, never. They don't ever come back. They try it once, they have a crazy experience, I'm sure, for a rat, and then they never come back again. Why? Because there's something genetically inside of them that says, stay the hell away from that. That felt a lot like what I think my death might be. I don't know. I can't crawl into the rat's head and tell you why they won't eat it again. But there's proven scientific fact about it not being addictive. It being what, Tim? Well, particularly psychedelics. Psychedelics are not addictive. That's proven. So, psilocin-containing mushrooms, the 5-MeO-DMT, dimethyltryptamine by itself, the various other tryptamines, NMDMT, all of the other compounds, mescaline, or mescaline-containing cacti. All of these various LSD, that's another one, lysergic saminio dioxide, I forget how you say that one, but LSD, acid, however you say it. These compounds are not addictive. Now, do they possess the capacity to be fun? Yes. Are they enjoyable? Can they be enjoyable? Yes. Do people use them to party and behave poorly? Yes. Am I going to keep asking myself questions that I know the answer to? The Sonoran desert toad is something that I had an experience with, and I intend to reward the individuals who have made it through this portion of the podcast up until this point. Now, if you have tuned in up until now, and you're just now tuning in, I will allow you to listen. Reluctantly so. But I want to encourage you that if you are just now tuning in, to stop listening right now and go back to the beginning. Because there's a whole bunch of gobbledygook that kind of matters up until this point. The prerequisites are important to me, and it's my story. So if you want to do it my way, go back to the beginning. It's up to you, though. Here's the thing. I was in a place where the compound that I'm going to be talking about was not illegal. It was a legal compound that I was consuming, and I can tell you that it was close to or closest to 5-MeO-DMT. I can tell you where it came from. I can tell you all sorts of things about it, but I will not tell you much more than what I just did about it. The individual giving it to me is somebody who's very dear to me to this day, and they were not drug dealers. Instead, they were individuals who found healing and wanted to show where that healing came from. Now, I was a religious person growing up, meaning I grew up in church. I grew up believing in God, and I grew up believing in faith. And I grew up believing in the stories in the Bible. So a peculiar metaphysical experience wasn't that far out of my framework, but it was a peculiar metaphysical experience that transcended my idea of what I thought psychedelia was. It's commonly referred to colloquially as the God molecule 5-MeO-DMT. And there's a reason that it's referred to as that. And it's primarily because a lot of people unanimously end up having an experience on this compound where they interact with or have an interaction with God, or someone that they call God, or they feel like they have a thing with God. And I too feel as though I had an experience with God on this compound. Now, before you question or dismiss what I'm saying as drabble, please understand that next to the birth of my children and the marrying of my wife, this is one of the most impacting and important experiences of my life. And it was not an experience that happened recently. It was quite a while ago. But I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, it definitely was the most important moment in my life. Now, impacting, I don't know. Important and impacting are two different words. But I hold on to this moment, this very short moment, as the catalyst for a lot of the things that I've chosen to do. As soon as I took the drug, I immediately wanted to look at all the psychedelic art and listen to the Grateful Dead. There it is. There's the whole story. Haha, got you. No, I'm kidding. That didn't happen at all. I don't really care for the Grateful Dead's music. Psychedelics art's alright, but anyway. So I was very, very hesitant to take this compound. I didn't want to, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I was concerned that all the scary places in my mind were going to be highlighted, and that this compound was going to put me there, and I was going to be stuck. And I didn't want to be stuck. And I was with a group of individuals with whom I trust to this day very, very much. And I watched one of them take the medicine. And how they took the medicine was with a vaporizer. There was allegedly this powder that I was told was this compound. It could have been flour or crystallized sugar, I don't know. But I know that what I was handling and the individual with whom I was handling it with was completely legal and above board, and there was no fear or concern of being penalized for what we were doing at all. And so I watched my friend use this vaporizer, and the individual giving him this medicine asked him some questions about his life, and held the mouthpiece of this vaporizer up to his mouth and took in a big breath, exhaled, took in one more big breath, exhaled, and took in one final big breath. And as my friend was exhaling, he fell back and told me that he disappeared and had all these crazy experiences about himself and God and love, and it did not make me feel more calm about going into this thing. So I sit down, and I'm in the middle of this giant pile of pillows, and I sit down, and this person looks at me who's giving me the medicine, and he asks me, "Tim, what makes you happiest in life?" I told him my wife and my children. And so I began to think about my wife and my children going into this journey. And I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. I know that I wasn't going to die, but I wasn't sure. There was a part of me that thought maybe this might be it. And that fear and panic was so real. It was so gripping. I mean, just thinking about it now makes it palpable. Makes it almost something like you can slice with a butter knife, you know? Not melted, but just soft enough. Feels real. Feels like something you can hold in your hands. And with a giant pit in my stomach, I said, okay, I'm ready. And I took a ragged breath in because I'd been crying for almost what felt like 4 or 5 days in preparation for this event. And I felt the pipe touch my lips, and I heard the sizzle of this compound as it was vaporizing, and I began to inhale the vapor of this white, sort of smoke-looking, terrible-tasting stuff. And I took it in and exhaled, and then took it in again and exhaled, and then by the third, I fell back. And what I felt was this buzzing in my ears. I felt this buzzing, lifting, pulling, shredding, screaming, squelching sound. And it wouldn't stop for what I felt like was a long time. And then it turned into a white light. And that white light was in front of me as I was falling back. And I was falling back, and I was falling back, and I finally fell back and fell onto a platform. And I looked down at the platform, and it's more like a cloud. And so I pick up myself, and I stand up, and I look around, and I become aware of a being or an entity on the end of this platform, maybe 100 feet long. And its back is to me. I don't know how I know that, because it didn't have arms or legs or a face, but it was there. And I look down, and I can feel mist. And I look down, and I see a row, like a road, like a dirt road, filled with trailers. And these trailers all have labels, and I could read the labels, and the labels said things like this event, that. I don't want to say them now for now, but there were events that occurred in my life that for me were very difficult and challenging. Some of you may know them already, and others may not. But I began to see that the trailers were actually labeled little spots of my trauma that were sort of little boxed off areas. And I just, as I was having this awareness, I felt this entity on the end of the platform coming closer. And I remember wanting so bad for it, whatever it was, to turn around. And I remember at the moment I could not contain my desire to pull its shoulder and turn around. It looked over its shoulder at me and said, "This is why we're here, aren't you ready?" And I didn't know what to say, because it didn't speak. I just know that that's what it said. And so I consented, and as soon as I gave consent, I don't remember if I spoke yes or not, it launched me from that platform with it. And I began to feel myself coming apart as we were climbing. I felt my skin falling off. I felt my bones pulling apart as we were climbing higher and higher and higher and higher. And then I disintegrated. And it felt like I was being pulled apart from the inside out. And I was still going up with this thing. And I remember at some point wanting to be back on the platform. And as soon as I was able to understand that I wanted to be on the platform, I was on the platform. And I look around, and I'm whole again. And I look down at the trailers there, and they're still all there. But it was like 10,000 miles away. And people, let me just tell you, it's not what it seems. It's not for the faint of heart. And if what I'm saying scares you, it's good. It should. It should be respected. You should not take it lightly. But don't not take it just because it's hard, because it's challenging. That's laziness. If you see yourself in a place where you might actually find value from something like this, and you listen to my story and say, I could never do that, stop being so weak. You haven't even experienced it yet, and you're already dismissing it. Stop it. I made the same mistake for a long time. And I think that I went and took the appropriate amount of medicine exactly when I needed to take it. And I don't regret my timing. But I know that I put it off for a lot longer than I needed to, for absolutely no good reason at all. Other than the fact that I was scared. Other than the fact that I didn't want to. Other than the fact that I didn't want to face what I felt like was going to be the hardest moments of my life. Again. But I need you to understand what I discovered was perspective. That even though I look at my problems and they seem innumerable, they even have an end. And even they can be seen from above. And there are heights higher than the difficult mountain you're trying to climb. And it was, for me, less about integration and more about the moment. First of all, it confirmed to me personally that there is a God, or at least an entity that has intentions. I don't know how you refer to it, and I can't quite decide if it's the Christian God or not. But I definitely am not completely shut off to religion like I was before that moment. And furthermore, I'm alive, which means I have stuff to do. I have to get after things. These moments, I don't want my trailer park to grow. And I often visit my trailer park, going through the trailers, cleaning them out, addressing the issues, fixing the various conundrums, and facing the terrible and disgusting moments that make me feel like a giant piece of shit. And I face those moments because I need to be fully me. And until I integrate those experiences, there are chunks of me that I feel will be completely and permanently disassociated and pulled apart. My wife made a comment when I came back from having this experience with 5-MeO-DMT, synthetic again, not from the toad. She said, sometimes it feels like I'm having you back again. But you know what was interesting, folks? She said the same thing when I first started using cannabis as a medicine. She says, it's like you're back again. So what does that tell me? It tells me that with the right amount of integration, and the right amount of dosage, and the right set and setting, anyone can find the value in an altered state of mind, with or without a compound. Why would I tell you this story? First of all, let's remember, it's just a story. It could completely be total and absolute lies. Who knows? I am a comedian after all, and most of what I say is a joke. But let's pretend for a moment, if you're willing, in this hypothetical world that we're creating on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and wherever else it is that you're listening to this. Let's pretend like it's not fake and that I did actually take these compounds and they did change my life forever. And let's pretend like they changed the lives of veterans across the nation, across the world, like they are. What do we do then? Do we keep it hidden under a rock? Do we talk about it more? Do we continue to talk about its decriminalization like we've done with cannabis for 25 years? Maybe longer? Or do we do something different? I, for one, am going to do something different. I intend to discuss these compounds as often and as commonly as I can, with you and with me, and I want to make you feel uncomfortable when I say the word mushrooms. But I need you to understand that I'm not interested in being high. I'm interested in being healed. And because of the time that I've spent in disassociation for so long, Sometimes it takes a good amount of grease to pry open these locks. And I recognize that many people use many of these compounds I previously mentioned in an ineffective way. And that's all right. That's their decision to make. So I'm not promoting you personally breaking or bending any laws whatsoever. But I want you to understand that one of the greatest individuals about this subject that has said these words, everyone's holding. And what does that mean? The toad, the cannabis, the ayahuasca vine, the curanderos mushrooms, the mescaline containing cacti. These things are helpful tools. They're assets. And when wielded appropriately, they definitely can bring us to great, great deep depths of knowing. But I want to encourage you, try to get there without them. If you don't know what I mean, Google somatic breathing, Google somatic therapy, consider body work, consider sending me a message about all the random crazy shit that I do that works and helps. It's not one size fits all. And I want you to know again what I've said previously, and if you haven't listened up until now, shame on you, go back and listen now, but listen this. There are more compounds that are legal that can get you high than there are compounds that are not legal. So, if your concern is, I'll never be able to get to that altered state of mind with breath work. First of all, you don't have the right breath coach. I am not one. But I'll show you what I do, and you can do it if you want. Or you can go to an actual breath coach, and they can show you. Or you can go to YouTube. What is it, 2020 now? Go to YouTube. Figure it out. Point is, there are a lot of breath work activities that can put you in an exceptionally altered state of mind. Wim Hof being one of them, who talks a lot about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and how your body can actually produce it. Did you know that? No, you didn't. Now you do. Or maybe you did and now you know it again. I'm going to talk a lot more about this subject, the veteran and the altered state of mind. But I want you to know, the next time you have this discussion with a veteran or with an individual and you're talking about altered states of mind, I don't want you to say, yeah, I've heard it's helpful. Stop saying it that way if you care. Maybe don't say it that way if you don't care. I don't know. I'm not trying to control you or manipulate you, but maybe consider not saying it that way. Maybe consider saying this. I know a guy who has some really strong evidence about how that's actually really good medicine. Psilocybin or psilocin containing mushrooms, 5-MeO-DMT, traditional dimethyltryptamine, cannabis sativa or indica, and breath work. First and foremost of all of them being sauna and breath work and cold. I promise that with the right focus and intention, you can achieve exceptionally altered states of mind with just a little bit of breath work. I say a little bit, a lot. Meditation, breath work, focus. These things are challenging and difficult, but not impossible, and definitely not unattainable, and definitely helpful. However, sometimes we're broken. Sometimes we need band-aids and crutches, like I do right now, because my stupid foot's all stupid. Sometimes we need those things. And that's okay to say. Hi, I'm Tim, I'm broken, and I needed a crutch for a long time. That's not bad to say at all. It's only bad when you use that crutch like it's a shoe, or a shirt, or a jacket, or a coat. These things have purposes of utility. Like, I use a crutch because I'm broken. I don't use a shirt because I'm broken. I use a shirt because I don't want my body to be exposed to the exterior temperatures, and I don't want Anthony to constantly be looking at my nipples the whole time we're talking. And there's not going to be a time when I'm feeling better, so I put a shirt on or off. It doesn't work that way. But when I feel better, I definitely take the crutches off. I definitely take the orthopedic shoe off. I unwrap the leg that doesn't need it. I don't wrap fingers that don't need it. I don't wrap toes that don't need it. You know what I'm saying? So do I use these altered states of mind all the time? No, I don't. I believe they would lose their efficacy and value, first of all. Second of all, I believe that perspective is helpful when there's integration. You go to the top of the mountain, but if you don't allow it to impact your life in any capacity, what was the value? You just worked hard. I mean, that in and of itself can be valuable, yes. It seems like it might be much more valuable to go up there with intention and focus and say, I'm going up to the top of the mountain so I can look at the valley. Look at that valley. Would you just look at it filled with all of my stuff? It's not as big as it seemed all the way up here. All the way up here, it seems a lot easier to deal with. Well, up here, I can actually look at everything. Oh, look at that. Up here, I can see a different route that I didn't know about before. A different way to get to that problem, that issue, that conundrum, that hurdle. None of that is able to be done without looking at the problem appropriately. None of it. So, are you interested in perhaps seeking a different perspective with your issues, but you're not interested in obtaining an altered state of mind? Or are you interested in obtaining an altered state of mind, but not interested in imbibing substances that otherwise would be considered to be illegal? ? Well, let me encourage you to really go do some hard work. Look, you could come attend some stupid class I could put on, or you could go to the internet and just be an adult. Take ownership. Sit down on a yoga mat and tell your family you need 30 minutes and go do a 15-minute Wim Hof breathing session and then do, 35 push-ups and 25 sit-ups and Look, you've got to be willing to do the work. And it's not about being fit or having muscles or any of that stupidness. Those are valuable things to a degree, but they're vapid. Existential assurity sounds much more interesting than a six-pack. Anyway, if you find value in this podcast, if you found interest in these words that I've allowed to exit the lower hole in my face, please consider sharing it with someone else. I'm not promoting a brand. If there is a brand, it's just Timothy Locklear. Many people have asked me that recently, actually, and I'm glad that it's come up. I'll close the podcast with this. I'm not sponsored by anyone. If I'm sponsored by anyone, it's probably closest to be the Veterans for Natural Rights, but even that's sort of a non-organization right now. It is, but it isn't. And regardless of what Veterans for Natural Rights is, who am I? I'm Tim Locklear. Hi. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt who's been training Jiu-Jitsu for a little bit here in Omaha. I have 6 children. I have a wife who I love. I have a dog who's amazing and he's sometimes an asshole. I train physical and mentally because I find value in its impact on my experiences that I have had as a result of being an upright bipedal on this rock that we live on. You see how I did that there? See how that works? It's super simple. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a brand. And I don't have to be comparable to anybody else. And I'm not interested in listeners. It's cool if people listen because they find value in it. But I'm much more interested in getting it out there. Because there's a chance there's one person that might stumble across a video that they're like, dude, I'm thinking about taking Toad, and I don't know what to do. I've heard it's valuable. I'm scared. All right, how much breath work have you done? See, I would never dissuade anyone from taking it necessarily. That's not true. There is people I'd be like, hey, you shouldn't do that. I guess I'm just saying that if you don't know the mental landscape, it might be a scary chore. But then again, I'm not a shaman, I'm not Jesus, and I'm definitely not the guy who gave it to me. If you knew the guy who gave it to me, you might feel a little bit more comfortable about taking it or not. I don't know. But if you're interested in achieving an altered state of mind and you don't want to take an illegal drug, I've been trying to get up early in the morning, and that in and of itself can be an altered state of mind, and doing some difficult things. I hear getting up before the sun and stretching and putting your feet in the soil every day can be helpful. I don't know. Sounds dumb, but couldn't hurt. Couldn't make it worse. And at least at the end of that event or occurrence, I can say, look what the hell I just did. I mean, not that toe in the dirt part. I won't tell anybody about that part. But just the getting up early portion where I got up and took the day by the huevos. You know, that's a valuable thing. That can be helpful. And you can find value in that. And you can start to begin to examine the mental landscape that you have up in your noggin. And you can do it completely sober. I mean, I say completely sober, but again, other people smarter than me have said things like everybody's holding, so maybe what you're producing in your own brain when you're doing that breath work is actually DMT or trace small amounts. Who knows? I don't, but I do know that I'm going to go into this place over here that I'm parked next to, and I'm going to go into this sauna that's super hot, and I'm trying to melt away a bit. I unfortunately am not able to train my normal jiu-jitsu and punching and kicking and things I want to. Someday I'll get back to choking and slapping Anthony, but just not right now. Please consider supporting your local veterans organization. Who are those people? What are those people? I don't know. But if you're not really comfortable doing that and you want to help a veteran, reach out to me. I know 2 or 3 veterans who are in need, not myself, but I know 2 or 3 who could use some things. So if you are feeling philanthropic, if you want to philanthropize, if you want to help somebody, or if you want to see about getting access to some of this medicine and you're not a veteran, and you're like, Tim, you talk about veterans, but I'm interested. This is insane. I'll tell you right now, I won't be your guy. Why? Because nature provides, I don't. It's a quote from Paul Stamets that I'll definitely steal. And if you want advice, if you want experience, I can share with you my stories. And I would love to share with you my thoughts on your stories. But just know I'm not a professional. I can't prescribe anything. I can't do that. And I want to encourage you to consider good psychotherapy. I don't believe that it can hurt. Most of the time, it won't. Most of the time, it'll be helpful. And especially if you get with a therapist that understands that you're intending upon having experiences of an altered state of mind. And that you're particularly looking for a psychotherapist that's willing to help you integrate these experiences. Francois Bozet wrote a book called Consciousness Medicine. That's helpful. The other individual that I mentioned at the beginning of this was Peter Levine. He wrote an amazing book on somatic therapy. Google both of those names. And then go to timothylocklear.com maybe and visit podcasts. There's a little playlist there with some recent podcasts and things. Stuff you might find value in. Oh yeah, and if you're not broken like me right now, stop not doing jiu-jitsu. You should do that. It's a quite helpful tool. It creates serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine because you're touching other people and you're exerting physical energy and you're doing a team activity. And it's very, very good for your mind and it's good for your person because it's self-defense. It's all really, really helpful. Plus you get to choke and slap Anthony.